Hello everyone and welcome to our channel. Today we're going to talk about how to write a paper of which you will be really proud of having written. And we'll start with why do you write a paper? Well, a paper it's necessary, for you to obtain a PhD degree. So it's a necessity. How to make of this necessity something that you will be absolutely stunned by what you've done. This is the key of our video today. And we're going to take you through some of the preliminary things, and then later on you will see my approach to writing effective papers. And what you can do is you can subscribe to our channel or leave some comments on things that you want to see next. Just go in the comments below and leave some ideas of the topic you want that we will present next time. So the first thing you need to ask yourself is, who are my readers? Who is my audience? There will be people in your same field which will be interested in understanding what you have done and how you have done it. So these are your primary audience. Then there are other things before you actually get there, because first you need to undertake your research. Then once you have written a paper, it needs to be scanned and approved by your supervisor. That's another gate you need to get through. Then after that, it needs to go to a journal. And there are some journals which scan the papers at the editorial level. So maybe your paper doesn't get even through the editors which scan through it, because they receive so many hundreds of papers per month. They can't publish all of them. So most of the papers don't even go to the reviewers. Once they choose which one to go to the reviewers, then the reviewers with the editors will be your gatekeepers. They will decide if your paper is not only of the good quality, but it's of the kind of talks about the kind of topics that the journal is really keen on publishing at that particular moment. And this kind of topics get changing over time at the same journal. So you need to make sure that you are publishing the right piece of research in the right place at the right time. So these are the kind of people, institutions that are your audience. And you need to please them all the way through if you want to get your paper published. Now that this is clear, we get to the next step. And the next step is about how do you conceive the idea, and then you start populating that kind of material that will eventually get into your paper, will make your paper something you will be very proud of. Okay, what we're doing now, we are going closer and closer to your writing part. But before the writing part, there is another very important thing which will determine how good the quality of the paper you are going to write is. And to understand this is to put yourself into the mind of an hunter. What you are doing when you go in the lab and do some preliminary work, you are hunting for an idea. You don't know where it's coming from, but if you have read enough background on the topic you're tackling, then you know that there are some unanswered questions. And typically this is not clearly written down by the people that write papers, but if you have read enough papers, you will understand that there are some areas in which previous researchers haven't gone. And that's your hunting ground. So you go there and in the lab you experiment with a few things. I typically spend 2-3 weeks in doing this, try this other, try this technique to visualize something, or try another. Ask some colleagues, friends to come along and play together a little bit till I get the thing I want to hunt. And then at that point, I know from the quality of the things I have just seen, I can gauge the quality of the paper I will write. It's already defined at that point. You don't need to do much more. Then once I have defined what I need to focus on, then I go back home and I think about how to devise an experimental campaign which is going to give me a large amount of data and do a thorough study on those parameters which I want to vary. And I vary the parameter within a certain range, which is the one that I am interested in, and I leave everything else out, because you remember, in one paper you cannot put everything that is out there. So you need to be a bit mindful of the fact that your paper, as well as your PhD, has a limited time span, and you need to get to the end of it with some tangible things in hand. And you may have to have a stepwise approach to get there. So you define the kind of parameters you want to experiment on, and then you go in the lab for another, 1, 2 months, maximum 3 months, and you get all the data you want to get. If in the previous part I was a hunter, so I was really curious and playful, at this point when I want to get the thorough experimental study, I'm like a robot, more or less. I go there with a specific number of experiments to do, and I don't get out of the lab until I made it, And so day after day after day after day, and I get everything done. At that point, then I have to get into another kind of mindset, the mindset of a writer. And now I need to understand that writing a paper, it's not like writing fiction. Your paper will be scrutinized by your supervisor first, then it will get into the hands of editors, and they will screen it before it goes to the reviewers, and then the reviewers can be quite demanding. We have seen already that they are the gatekeepers of science, and these people are the one that define if your work is going to get published or not, and may have a good say about the likelihood of you finishing on time or not your PhD as well. And then there is another thing, which is readers don't just read your paper just to read it. They will want to understand what you've done, maybe repeat what you've done, but they will also cite your work. So write your paper in a way that it's quite unique what you have done, the technical work, but also how you have written. Give them extra freebies so they can reference to your paper. And your paper becomes a kind of standard, for your industry, let's say. Now, in the next section, we're going to look at more specific thing about writing paper. Where, for instance, do I start to write a paper? Do I start it from the title? Or do I start it from the reference? We're going to see that next. Okay, now we are at the part where you are an author, So where do we start to write a paper? Do we start it sequentially from the title of the paper, go through it till the references? Well, I have started in different ways over the years, but the way I then understand it works better for me is to start writing the paper from the experimental description. So I describe what I have done in the lab, which techniques I've used, in the lab, and that's where my paper starts. I know already in the back of my head that I've read enough papers to understand that what I'm going to talk about has some unique points into it. So I start from the experimental setup and procedure. That's where I start. And why is important this part is because people want to know how you've done it. If there are PhD students out there interested in your work, they may want to repeat what you've done, because repeating what you've done would become for them a kind of a point from where they can take off, like a springboard. So your paper will be a springboard for them. So it's important to write this part rightly. And then I start processing the data, and little by little I start figuring out if to put graph, if to put tables, okay, making sure that there is no repetition of the same information being given in different graphs or in graphs and tables, okay? So, and make it kind of flowing. But at this point in time, I'm not very bothered about, coherence of the whole story. I just, write down a couple of pages maximum of the experimental setup procedure. Then, 4, 5, maybe 6 pages of, the results. And I first present the results, and then after I presented all the results, I then comment on them in a different section, okay, of the paper. And after these 2 big things are done, which is experimental setup and the procedure plus the results presented and commented, at this point, okay, I now decide which kind of journal to hand, okay? And once I've understood which kind of journals to hand, then I'll make the rest of the paper to fit, okay, that particular journal template. Every journal has different requirements. You may submit a regular paper, you may submit a review papers, or you have enough very good things to produce a letter. Okay, the letters are very short, 2,500 words. So you need to fulfill those requirements. So how long does it take this writing for me? There are some people that can write it in a few days, a week, they say, but I can't. I need for the full writing process about between 2-3 weeks. Okay, and why? Because I have at least 4 iterations of the writing process. In the first iteration, I then write the introduction, where I take the reader through a very large funnel which closes off very quickly and directs the reader into my field, okay? And here I put also the reference from the first version of the paper, because I need to make sure that the reader understand I have done a quite good job of reading other people's work, and maybe at this point I need to read even more papers, okay, while I'm writing the manuscript. And then after that I go into the conclusion. I write the conclusion, and the conclusion I write them kind of without bound. I mean, I can write 1 or 2 pages, and I summarize what I've done, kind of from the idea I want to put forward to answer a specific question which was unanswered out there. And then after I've done this, I have here 1 or 2 pages of the conclusion. What I do is I squeeze it, I sum it up even more, and from there I get the abstract. Abstract, can be quite short, can be, few lines sometimes if it's a letter, probably 7-8 lines if it's a regular paper. Therefore, it needs to be very condensed, okay? And here you can state what the problem is, mention what you your approach is, what stunning experimental result you got. So you need to be a bit, use some emotive language here, to emphasize your contribution. Use a couple of words here there in the abstract which emphasize your contribution. Okay, and after that, at the very last, I put the title. The title is sound bites, few words really. What can you put in few words? Yeah, if you start writing the title before you have, written the rest of the paper, it's a bit, difficult. I write it as a condensate of my abstract, okay, and then I can write a single line, okay, title, which is what people are attracted by when you get to your paper. Okay, now to sum this up, okay, I like to give you some extra suggestions that will help you growing as a researcher. Okay, I have worked both in academia and industry. Also in industry, I have to put a research proposal, produce reports and the things. So I know also that angle. And in this other few minutes, please hang on. I'm going to give you some general suggestion how to be successful in this. Question is how to easily write papers. I mean, there is no easy way to write papers, but you can write comfortably, okay, paper. You can learn to write comfortably paper. But the first and foremost way to do it is by reading a lot. A voracious reader will make of you a prolific writer. So read a lot, read the work of others with a critical mindset. Not only trying to understand what the word says, but trying to also understand what they have not done, which isn't reported there, because what they have not done is what you can do. Okay, so first thing is reading. You remember in the previous sessions we have talked about these 4 different steps I take to write, or 4 iterations if you like. So we got to the second iteration when we were writing the paper structure in a way that suits the publisher, but it's not the end of it. There are 2 other things which I do after that. After that, I start to give coherence to the story. Okay, the story should flow very nicely from top down, because you may write the paper from the result session, but people read it from the title. Okay, so sequentially, so you need to give you some coherence. You need to excite the person. Some people may read your paper even if it's not exciting, because they may need it. Okay, but there are other researchers out there which do similar work to yours. So if you want that everybody reads your paper, you need to make it spicy enough for them to read, so they can find new information, new things, new ideas almost on any page of your paper. Even when you talk about the reference, the way you talk about the reference should be not just stating what they have said, okay, but especially saying what they have done right, what they have done wrong, where they missed something. Okay, then this is the third iteration. The fourth iteration is about leaving your manuscript for 1 week at least there without touching it. Okay, why? But because you have been in a kind of a battle, and you shouldn't submit the paper, the manuscript, okay, whilst you had that battle. Leave it for a week or so. Leave it to rest. Don't touch it. Don't watch it. Okay? After the week, you will go there with fresh eyes and you will find many more things that you can fix. And these are the kind of 4 iterations I do. Okay? Now, there's one more thing. It's about, the help you find out there on internet, on YouTube, from people that, they give you suggesting tips, on how to write papers. Now, sanity check. Who are these guys? Okay. Why? Because some of them are, professors, editors, and established researchers. some are not. Some may have just done their PhD, 20 years ago. Things change very quickly. Almost every year, journals change the way they, look at papers published and the kind of topics they want to publish on. So, someone has done a PhD 20 years ago, how can he or she help you much? Find out people that are still doing some sort of research, are involved in as editors in some journals, are professors, things like this, from people that are in the business now, not have been in the business 20 years ago, okay? The other thing is that don't just look at material you find in YouTube, Google, okay? Even if you go on Amazon and you find some books, maybe those books are written by the same people that have done their PhD who knows when, or they haven't done it at all, So just be careful what you buy and with which intention you buy it, okay? So try to find sources of inspiration and about writing your thesis or your paper into established institution. Universities do this. Many universities tell you ways to write papers and for sure thesis, and established people, professors, editor of journals. Many journals publish from time to time also a paper on how to write a paper. Okay, so you go and find that. There is one example of this which I put down below in the description of this video. But that is just one example. There are so many more. Just do some search. Last two things is that you need to be prepared for criticism. Okay, when you get your paper out, most of the times the editor and the reviewers will not say, "Oh, great work! Just get it published like this." They can be quite harsh at times. So you need to be prepared, okay, for that. And how to be prepared for that? Well, first of all, to open your mind a little bit, to get criticism in and work through it. But another way is to go back in the lab after you have submitted your manuscript and do some other work, because it will take 1 or 2 months or even more a little bit to get feedback, okay, from the journal. So you do some other things. You just don't stay there waiting for the rain to come. The last thing I want to say is that I produced this little booklet, which is now at a promotional price on Amazon, and talks about different things on the PhD project. And next time we're going to talk about how to approach the writing of a thesis, which is a mammoth task compared to a paper. For the paper you are excited about, for the thesis not that much. So we're going to talk about how to approach it. For now, thank you for watching.